As we continue to explore family systems therapy models, we'll focus today on Bowen's intergenerational theory. Like the other family modalities we've studied, Bowen's work is part of the systemic therapy models that support changing of the family system. Before moving on, I want to point out some of the highlights of the 4 family systems models, 3 of which we are covering in detail in this course. We think of family as a system or in a relational context in which all parts are interconnected, and there are 3 terms to keep in mind here. The first is circular causality, and this means that the family system is actually an interlocking chain of events called feedback loops, which are constantly occurring. One event is not necessarily causal to another, rather they work in tandem to create the dynamics that occur. The second concept is open versus closed systems. In an open system, information flows in and out easily. When problems occur in an open system, for example, a family might seek outside sources such as therapy for solutions. A closed system tends to be less open to change, yet please remember that no system is completely open or closed. How would you characterize your family? More open? More closed? Lastly, we think of systems in terms of homeostasis because they tend to self-regulate and resist change. If one member changes, for example, the system will attempt to change him or her back to the way they were. That's why therapy can present challenges to families even when they ostensibly desire change. When considering the family systems models, Bowen's theory is the most insight-oriented of the 4. Called the intergenerational model, counseling loosely integrates past generations of familial patterns into the therapy mix. It can be used with families or individuals and can also be quite time-consuming when compared to other systems approaches. Now, as you can see from the mind map, there are a number of central constructs, so we'll want to pay close attention to some of the dynamics that make up Bowen's approach. This week, we'll focus on the Clarksons, and please view the film titled Bowen Therapy Video, which provides a mock counseling session with the Clarkson family. Pause the video as needed to review. Now here are the central constructs of Bowen's model. The family projection process involves the parents and how they transmit or project their immaturity and lack of differentiation onto their children. And because it is intergenerational, it also involves how family of origin dynamics may be passed down from generation to generation. Think of some of the behaviors of your grandparents. How do they manifest themselves in your parents and in you? Now, the second construct is differentiation of self, which is a lifelong process of maintaining balance in one's family through movement towards individuation and away from fusion or the absence of boundaries. Here is a good working definition of differentiation, and please pause the video as needed to review. In the Clarkson family, which parents are most and least differentiated? The next central construct is triangles, in which a third person is utilized to diffuse tension of a dyad. Now, because of their prominence in most families, Bowen considered triangles to be the basic building blocks of any emotional system. When relationships become distant and anxiety increases, a third person or thing is introduced to stabilize the relationship. Among the Clarksons, Lena plays a triangulated role in order to reduce the stress of the parental dyad. Now, please note that triangles reduce immediate anxiety, but also decrease the chance of resolving the problem within the original dyad. Now, the fourth central construct is togetherness and individuality. Bowen stressed the importance of balancing the two, and when you think of your own family, would you say that there is a healthy or unhealthy balance between togetherness and the individuality of each member? Note that without this balance, the relationships within the family might become polarized. The fifth central construct is one which we've all no doubt heard about: sibling position. This involves fixed personality characteristics based on sibling position, whether firstborn or later born. Take a look at this chart. Do these attributes apply to you or your siblings? Now, the sixth and final central construct is emotional cutoff. People cut off from their families of origin in order to reduce the discomfort of being in emotional contact with them. Individuals are often undifferentiated, and toxic emotional ties may cause members to move away and avoid communication with siblings or parents. Now, because we've already reviewed case conceptualization, I won't spend time discussing it now, but we will continue to look at the family psychology paradigm of intra-individual, interpersonal, and environmental macrosystemic tiers throughout our discussion of family systems models. The goals of Bowen's therapy model are to lower the anxiety of family members so they can interact more effectively, increase differentiation, especially of the adult couple, to help manage anxiety. Bowen hypothesized that changes made at the adult level could more successfully impact relationships among younger members. Now, the next goal is to help the family member with the problem, often called the identified patient, to learn to resist unhealthy triangulation and emotional fusion. And lastly, monitor the progress of family members in terms of current functioning and in terms of their potential to adapt to future changes. And how might these goals apply to the Clarkson family? So if these are our goals, what interventions does Bowen suggest that we use to reach them? I will focus on 6 of them now. The first intervention is the genogram, which you're constructing as part of your homework assignment. This is an important assessment tool for identifying intergenerational patterns and dynamics, and here are some of the guidelines for indicating some of these patterns in the genogram. Note the genogram for the Clarkson family, and please pause the video as needed. And here's a general overview of the numerous symbols that can be used when constructing a genogram. Now, the second intervention is the use of process questions. This may remind you of some of the Socratic and other types of questions we've discussed with different models earlier in the semester. These questions are designed to decrease anxiety and help family members think rationally about their situation. They also focus on behaviors and emphasize personal responsibility. A good example of a process question occurs in this week's therapy video when the therapist, Dr. Chege, carefully interrupts Lena as she continuously speaks for her mother and asks Suzanne to speak for herself. The third goal I want to discuss is detriangulation, in which the therapist directly injects him or herself as a third party between 2 family members in order to dissolve dysfunctional triangles and reduce tension. Over the course of therapy with the Clarksons, imagine how Dr. Chege might use himself as a third party to weaken the dysfunctional triangle of the family. Next, one of the most famous of Bowen's techniques is the going home again exercise, in which the client is encouraged to go home and re-experience his or her nuclear family without emotional reactivity. Here are instructions for the client, so please pause the video as needed to review. Now, another intervention is displacement stories, in which the therapist provides stories or anecdotes about other families and how they are similar to the lives of the current families in therapy. Films, books, and other media can be used, and therapy-based movies such as Ordinary People are sometimes recommended during this process. The last technique I want to mention is coaching or teaching and reinforcing what has been learned about healthy family processes. In his work with the Clarksons, Dr. Chege provides psychoeducation about important processes occurring in the family and coaches members on how to interact more effectively with one another. On a cultural level, let's consider the concept of differentiation. The process is crucial to Bowen's model and involves the development of healthy boundaries. And yet, differentiation is a distinctly Western concept which promotes autonomy and individuation. What might be some of the culturally based issues that might arise when utilizing this concept? For example, when considering a family from another culture with at least one teenager who wants to move away from home instead of staying with the family, you might respond by asking questions of each member, such as, how does this decision impact you and your cultural values? What are the similarities and differences between your culture and the culture of the United States? Is there a way to bring together different values from the two or more cultures that impact your family? The process of therapy loosely involves three general steps: construction of the genogram, assessment, and differentiation. In the first step, the therapist and family construct a genogram. Next, the assessment process takes place and information from the genogram is evaluated in terms of the central constructs we've discussed, such as family projection process, sibling position, etc. The history of the relational problem issues are explored, and the therapist assesses the broader context of the extended family systems. Finally, the therapist uses techniques we've discussed in order to help family members navigate the differentiation process. Interventions such as the going home exercise and coaching are used to help members move towards individuation and away from fusion and other maladaptive relational patterns. Have a great week.